Let's get right into this explainer. Today, we're diving into a truly paradigm-shifting question. What exactly happens when verified medical data completely defies our everyday understanding of reality? We'll be looking at the work of historian Dale Allison, who has spent years digging into empirical data that absolutely challenges our standard default ways of thinking about the human mind.
It all boils down to this massive question. Is the supernatural scientifically documented? I mean, what happens when serious, secular researchers at labs across Duke, Stanford, Princeton, and the University of Virginia document events, things like near-death experiences and remote viewing, that simply cannot be absorbed into our current scientific paradigm? We're not just talking about folklore or urban myths here.
Now, to really grasp the gravity of this, we kind of have to start by defining materialism. Basically, it's the philosophical belief that nothing exists except matter. Under this view, consciousness is purely an emergent property of the physical brain. It's very often treated as the objective scientific default. But, as we're going to see throughout this explainer, it can sometimes act as a rigid dogma that actively suppresses contradictory data.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll cover the dogma of materialism, unexplainable medical anomalies, the antenna model, the great suppression, and finally, navigating the transcendent.
All right, jumping straight into part one, the dogma of materialism.
Historian Dale Allison makes this fascinating point. When statistically significant data emerges, dogmatic materialism often just ignores it or instantly assumes fraud without any real evidence. Take the 1930s at Duke University, for instance. Researcher J.B. Ryan ran these highly controlled ESP card experiments and got astounding statistically significant results. But prominent skeptics concocted elaborate scenarios claiming the subjects must have cheated, literally without a single shred of proof, just to protect their materialist worldview. Open inquiry, on the other hand, means analyzing the data without a predetermined script.
Which brings us to Section 2, Unexplainable Medical Anomalies.
We're talking about patients who are clinically unconscious, like zero brain activity during major surgery, waking up and reporting hyper-specific details. Dr. Bruce Grayson, a renowned researcher, had a patient accurately recount seeing him down the hall during her surgery. She even noted he had a spot of mustard on his tie. This isn't just dreaming or some drug-induced hallucination. These are verified, incredibly specific details observed by patients with inactive brains, leaving highly trained medical personnel absolutely puzzled. And that leads us to a staggering phenomenon known as terminal lucidity. This happens when patients suffering from severe, irreversible brain degradation, think advanced Alzheimer's or brain cancer, suddenly regain perfect memory and conversational clarity right before death. If consciousness is solely a product of the physical brain, terminal lucidity should be biologically impossible. You simply cannot run a complex software program on a physically smashed computer. Yet, it's documented over and over again. We are not looking at 1 in a million flukes here. We're seeing a persistent pattern across the globe. In Canadian hospices, a massive 33% of palliative care workers profess witnessing it. A New Zealand hospice recorded 6 cases out of 100 general deaths. And at the Vienna Institute, roughly 10% of dementia patients displayed this lucidity. Those numbers are highly suggestive. Let's just pause on that figure for a second. 10%. A cognitive scientist maintains that roughly 1 in 10 patients with severe dementia display this sudden, impossible clarity before passing. 10%. That requires a massive rethinking of how consciousness actually relates to our biology.
To try and make sense of this, let's explore Section 3, the antenna model.
We really have to contrast the traditional brain as a generator model with what we call the antenna model. Materialism says the brain creates consciousness, like a fire creates heat. But philosopher William James proposed an incredibly helpful analogy, a TV set. The brain doesn't generate the signal, it acts as a receiver, or even a filter for consciousness. Think about it. If you take a bat and smash a television set, the picture stops, sure, but the invisible broadcast signal out in the air, it remains perfectly intact. If we view the brain as that TV receiver, or a filter, it suddenly explains a lot. It means that low brain states, like when a brain is physically shutting down in a near-death experience, or during deep meditation that deactivates certain regions, or even sleep in psychoactive states, actually lower the brain's filtering mechanism. It perfectly explains why an unfunctioning or impaired brain suddenly correlates with incredibly heightened, vivid consciousness.
Which naturally leads us to ask our Section 4 question.
The Great Suppression. Who is hiding this, and why aren't we taught about it?
It's a fascinating historical irony, really. Modern atheistic skepticism actually grew directly out of Protestant Christianity. During the 16th century Reformation, Protestants wanted to thoroughly reject Catholic miracles, relics, and ghosts. So they adopted a skeptical stance, basically saying miracles stopped after the biblical era. Later philosophers like John Locke and David Hume built directly on these Protestant treatises, which eventually evolved into modern secular materialism. So historically, both organized religion and secular science have had major incentives to suppress the metanormal.
And the result of this centuries-long suppression? Profound social pressure. Both religious doctrine and secular materialism have deeply pathologized these experiences. People are literally terrified they'll be labeled crazy if they speak up. Take this 1990s study on widows and widowers. Initially, only 2% admitted to encountering their dead spouse. But once interviewers assured them that this was a totally common part of the grieving process, not a symptom of mental instability, the floodgates opened.
Think about this stark contrast. Simply removing that social pressure and the fear of institutional judgment changed the reporting rate from a marginal 2% to a massive 50%. It just goes to show how much vital human data is kept completely hidden purely out of fear.
Let's move into our final section, Part 5, Navigating the Transcendent, and how we actually go about weighing this evidence.
Now look, we absolutely must vocalize our skepticism here. As we weigh the human experience, there are very real reasons to doubt. Human vision gets tricked, memories are notoriously faulty, and self-deception or outright fraud are real factors we have to account for. But we also have profound reasons to believe. When we see undeniable cross-cultural patterns, highly specific medical corroborations, like the doctor's mustard tie, and consistent, life-altering internal testimonies, it demands our serious empirical attention. We can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater.
So why do some people easily experience this stuff while others absolutely never do? Dale Allison brings up this concept of thick versus thin individuals. We don't know exactly why, maybe it's genetics or sociology or environment, but some individuals, the thin ones, seem highly permeable to the metanormal. They might see a glowing spiritual master or have these vivid verified premonitions. Meanwhile, thick individuals are just solidly bricked into the material world and nothing strange ever happens to them.
But here is perhaps the most beautiful takeaway from all of this research. Whether a metanormal experience is private or public, whether you are thick or thin, those who encounter this transcendent presence universally report one profound thing. As Dale Allison notes, they are overwhelmed by this transcendent love and bliss. And crucially, they don't just feel it as a fleeting emotion, they fundamentally realize that this overflowing love is what reality is truly all about. It is the absolute bedrock of the universe.
So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to ponder as you reflect on your own worldview and your own life experiences. If your brain is really just an antenna, what signal is it currently tuned to, and are you open to receiving it? Thank you for exploring this fascinating data with us in this explainer today. Stay curious, keep learning, and as always, keep seeking to understand the mysteries around us.